Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. I am your host, Matt Cooper. With me is my co-host, Matt Rupert. And tonight we have a special guest, the woman who beat Matt Jackson in fantasy football this week and is thus taking his place on the show, his wife, Alyssa. Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. The better Jackson is here.
We're glad to have you. How did it feel to beat Matt in fantasy football this week?
I have to say, I was really excited to beat him in this one. I was supposed to beat him in the other league too, but I lost by like a couple points there. But it's okay. This one was a better league, so I felt good.
Yeah, beating him twice, that would have been he would have never lived that one down. So did you do any trash talking?
No, only because I don't like to lose and I like to win. So I like to be quiet until I see that I win. And then I like to do my I beat you kind of.
Okay, so you did the trash talking after the fact.
Yeah, pretty much. All right.
That's awesome. How upset was he?
Well, so I like to draft. So like when we were drafting originally, this year I liked to pick people like by myself. So I was really excited when people that I picked started doing well, and he likes to say that he helped me pick him, but I liked his name better. I liked the player's name, and so I picked him. And Matt was like, "Oh, that's actually a really good guy," and I was like, "Great," because I'm gonna pick him.
Nice. Who was the guy? Who was your key to victory here?
So my husband makes fun of me because I call him Devon Chan. When I first read the name, I read it like that, and he's like, "That's not how you say it." And not gonna lie, I still don't think I know how to say it, so I just always call him Devon Chan.
That is amazing. We love to see it. I will say on a show a few weeks ago, I believe it was Matt Jackson that said he was overpriced and had the most to lose this season. And I argued with him about it. I said, no, he's going to be a stud. So glad to see that he is eating the fruits of his.
I think I do belong with this podcast then.
Welcome, Alyssa. But in all seriousness, we're not kicking Matt Jackson off. We love Matt Jackson. Alyssa, congratulations on your win. We're going to bring Matt back on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Yep.
Matt Jackson, you've endured your humiliation.
Welcome back on the show. It's been an ongoing all week thing. So.
Welcome back.
I caught that Devon Chain comment, by the way. I don't appreciate that.
All right. So on this episode of the Couch Scouts podcast, we will be breaking down a crazy week 2 of football where we saw upsets galore. We're going to be discussing some key takeaways on how to respond to the injuries that we saw. And my goodness, are there a lot of injuries, as well as just playing a little game of stock up and stock down coming off of week 2 NFL season. So before we get into the show, just wanted to take a quick second to let you guys know that we've got a website and we would love for you to check it out, subscribe, become a Couch Scout, CouchScouts.com. We've got all kinds of great resources in there. We've got an all-22 film room. We've got one-on-one consultations where you can get on a Zoom call with one of us and we'll talk you through strategy for one of your dynasty teams. We've got bonus podcasts. We'll be recording one right after this show ends, and it'll go up on the site for our subscribers. And when rookie rolls around, we're going to do an in-depth rookie guide, and that'll be part of it too. So definitely jump on CouchScouts.com today, and you can actually sign up right now. We're running a promotion. We just did a massive film room update. So if you sign up using promo code FILM, F-I-L-M, you can get 10% off CouchScouts.com. So check it out. and let's get into the show. So, we see this every year, but the IR and the injured list is starting to look like a pretty solid championship contending team. You could build a whole really good roster just off of the players that are hurt, which is pretty sad to see. But we're going to talk about a lot of these players that are hurt and what ramifications are going to come from their injury from a dynasty perspective. You guys ready to get into the show?
Let's do it.
Go.
All right. First guy up, of course, we've got to start with the biggest news probably, and that is Tua Tagovailoa. If you're playing in a super flex dynasty league, which most dynasty leagues are these days, this is a key piece to your team that you were counting on. This was a piece of your dynasty roster that held a significant amount of value. You probably drafted him high or traded a decent amount for him, and he has another head injury. He says he's not retiring, but he has officially been sent to the IR, which means he's going to be out for a while. So let me just ask you guys, we'll start with you, Rupert. What are we doing with Tua in Dynasty?
If you have shares, I think you just have to hold on to them and, just kind of pray for the best. People are going to be too scared of the fact that he might be like one hit away from retiring. So you're not going to get a ton of value in return. So I think at this point, you just got to hold on to him and just take all the points that you can get while he's playing.
I completely agree with that. I mean, unfortunately, this is one of those situations where I think you're stuck holding the bag a little bit. I think it's interesting what it does to the rest of that team, right? To like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's value. Skylar Thompson is not a prolific thrower of the football. I know those guys get open pretty significantly, but I mean, he doesn't throw the ball as well as Tua does. So I'm worried about how that offense as a whole, from a dynasty perspective, is just going to operate. Their running back room is pretty injured. Raheem Mostert was out last week. Devon Achane was dealing with an injury this week and was a last-minute decision that he was going to play. So, I mean, there's a lot more injuries to this team than just Tua. So I'm really worried about this offense as a whole when it comes to just your overall dynasty perspective.
Yeah, so when it comes to Tua, I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance than you guys. And I will agree that you got to hold him for now. I mean, if you sell now, you're selling for pennies on the dollar. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold. And when he comes back, people, I mean, you may have to be patient here. But at some point, people have short-term memories, right? Like, it was not last season, but the season before that where he had 3 of these head injuries. And everybody was saying, oh, he could be one hit away from retiring. His value cratered that offseason. And you couldn't sell him for hardly anything. But he came back, played a fully healthy 2023 season. Everybody put all the concussion stuff in the rearview mirror. Not me. I kept saying he's still one hit away from potentially retiring. And I don't think he's that great when he's on the field. I mean, you looked at him the first 2 weeks, he looked pretty rough. And I mean, there's no rushing upside. Like, I think he's kind of overrated anyway and kind of propped up by a lot of the weapons around him. But he is productive when he's out there. And so what I would say is you hold for now, but when he comes back and he starts to put together some healthy games and people kind of forget about this whole incident and they need a quarterback, that's when I'm looking to sell, because I don't want anything to do with him on my dynasty rosters. And this is going to happen again. I hope it doesn't. It's probably going to happen again. And when it does, immediately the talk is going to be the same thing about retirement. Immediately he's going to miss over a month. Immediately, like, all of this, it's just like it's going to happen. And so where I have him, I think a buy window will open up at some point, or a sell window rather. And as soon as it does, I'm selling him. I want him off my rosters. I don't want him in Dynasty. So that's how I'm approaching it. And as far as the other players, there could even be a buy low. I mean, I think depending on how panicked people are about, oh man, it's Skylar Thompson. Are they going to be reliable? I mean, both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Devin Achane are incredible with the ball in their hands. They can catch this little short, low ADOT stuff and make big plays happen. They're still going to get big volume. So I'm not as concerned about those three guys. And I would say that if there's a significant dip, I would consider buying in on that, especially knowing that like it's a temporary thing and Tua probably is coming back later this season. So when you get to your fantasy playoffs, like these are guys that should be studs for you, and you might be able to get them at a discount right now.
I guess what I was saying was it's bad short term for them, right? And as dynasty managers, you don't want to be short term. So I totally get where you're coming from there. I think if there's going to be a window, it's going to be after this next week. People are going to see how bad that offense is going to look with Skylar Thompson, in my opinion, and that window is going to open up for those other players after Sunday.
For sure. All right, moving on to our next injury here. Isaiah Pacheco, broken fibula. It looks like 6 to 8 weeks minimum, but I've heard it could be 10 weeks plus. Similar to the injury that ended Tank Dell's season last year. I mean, this is a significant long-term injury here. I mean, it's not like he's not been ruled out for season or anything, but you're basically losing almost this entire season. And who knows, when he comes back, if he's fully, 100% with the player that he typically has been. So significant injury here. I think he's a hold. I think that's pretty straightforward. Like you hold him, he's going to come back. He's going to be productive. But what I'm interested in talking about here is the other guys. Who's going to step up in his absence? So Carson Steele and Samaje Perine split touches after the injury. And then they brought in Kareem Hunt off the street. I think today they officially signed Kareem Hunt. So a little reunion from where he started his career. How do we see this running back room playing out? And are you guys interested in any of these? We'll start with you, Rupert.
I think it's going to be a mess, frankly. We have seen P. Ryan kind of carry the load in Cincinnati and sometimes in Denver. So it's something he's capable of doing. It's just not something – he's not really the explosive back or anything like that. The fact that Kareem Hunt is on waivers in a lot of leagues, in a lot of deep dynasty leagues, I put in a couple waiver offers just to – due to the fact that he's familiar with the system, he's been there. So I feel like he could get up to speed quickly. To me, he has the highest ceiling, even though he is coming off the street. We just have seen in the past what he's done in that offense. He's not old, but he definitely last year didn't look like the player he was of years past. But I'm just going to take a chance on him just due to the fact that he's on the waiver wires in some leagues, and other leagues you may be able to trade it or wait round guy to get him.
I will take a little bit of a different approach to that.
Yes.
Kareem Hunt does somehow have some upside, but for at least a little, like I like the Carson Steele, Carson Steele in that backfield. He's a bigger body guy. If you watch any of those Kansas City Chiefs games, he gets the goal line touches. Will he be touchdown dependent? I think he will be. But I mean, we saw in the case of like David Montgomery for the Lions, right, that had all of those touchdowns, a year or two ago. He was fantasy relevant for touchdowns alone. I think maybe Carson Steele can be that. He's not going to get the workload, I think, but he's getting the goal line touches. And that, at least to me, for somewhat makes him a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to lean more on the Carson Steele side as well. And I mean, you said Kareem Hunt is not old. He's 29. And actually so is Samaje Perine. And Kareem Hunt, at least last time I saw him on a football field, he looked completely washed. So I don't know if you're going to be able to trust any of these guys, but Carson Steele is the one I have the most interest in because he's young. I mean, obviously I don't think he's some kind of long-term answer there, but in Dynasty, like I'm always going to want to take a shot on the young guy. The fresh legs. He went undrafted, but he was a really good college player, and he looked really good for them in the preseason. So, to me, he would be my bet to come in and just, at least between the tackles, look like the most efficient runner and breaking tackles and actually looking like a guy that can help them win rather than just a warm body that they're throwing out there. So Carson Steele for me as well. Let's move on to the next injury here, and it is Joe Mixon. He suffered an ankle injury and received an MRI. The news is that it is not considered to be long-term or serious, although it looked pretty bad watching it during the game. Are you interested in any of the backups here if he misses time? I'll start with you, Jackson.
I mean, back up there, Damian Pierce. I mean, he's interesting. I mean, he's gotten some carries this season. It's primarily been Joe Mixon, right, for obvious reasons. I've never really been interested in Akers, right? I mean, he's had his opportunity, and he hasn't really ever done anything that's overly impressed me. I don't know. For me, a lot of these guys are just Jags, right? I mean, for me, I think this offense as a whole is going to be one that just passes the ball more. We saw what Nico Collins could do. I'm really excited about him as a fantasy weapon. He's really solidified himself as the number one on that team. So really like the passing attack more than anybody as a rusher on that team.
Yep, agreed. Don't have anything to add there, really. It is a bunch of Jags, and I do think they're going to throw more. So good call on that one. Moving on here, T. Higgins, he has a hamstring injury. Again, the timeline for his return is uncertain. I don't believe he's returned to practice yet, and this seems to be a recurring issue here. So before we get to the surrounding pieces, let's talk about T. Higgins himself. What are y'all doing with T. Higgins in Dynasty? Start with you, Rupert.
I'm going to hold and try and wait for a sell window if he goes to a new team and becomes their number one. Right now, I feel like people kind of view him as almost like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 territory. Injuries definitely souring as well. So I'm just going to wait probably until next year and just hold on. Unless I can package him in a deal and kind of get something over top if I can do a 2-for-1 kind of trade. But as of right now, and I fortunately don't have any shares in all my leagues, but if I did, I'd just probably wait for next season and hope that he finds a better landing spot where he can be the number one and, have some off-season, value shoot up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I might even consider him a buy candidate. And I know it feels gross, but like a good buy candidate probably is going to feel gross because if everybody, it's like people always say, "Oh, buy this guy or buy that guy," but it's like everybody's thinking the same thing, dude. Like the ones that if you really want to get a discount, you got to do it when everybody else is like, no, not really feeling it. Like Rashee Rice this offseason, everybody was like, nah, man, I feel gross about that. I don't want to go there. Well, Guess what? If you did that, you got a supreme value on Rashee Rice. So you have to kind of buy when people are feeling gross about it. T. Higgins is still young. He's talented. Yes, the injury stuff is frustrating. I agree with you. I think there's going to be a big value spike this offseason when he goes to a new team. And so why not buy for pennies on the dollar now, or at least try to, and then sell for a profit this summer? That'd be my approach. I would inquire with the T. Higgins owner and just see how frustrated they are and what they're willing to part with him for. So let's talk about the rest of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, like if he wins, for example, at the Chargers, where he's got Watt on the other side and Herbert throwing him the ball, I feel like his value, like everyone's going to freak out and be like, oh my gosh. And then you can really sell him for a profit or just hold on and enjoy any added production.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the kind of surrounding pieces here. We have 2 weeks of data now where we've actually seen what does this wide receiver room look like without him. Is there anyone that has caught your eye stepping up in his absence? We'll go to you, Jackson.
I'm going to throw in a super, super diamond in the rough deep guy that is most likely on probably everybody's waiver wires right now. Andre Losavas only had 2 catches this week, both of those catches were touchdowns. So not a huge sample size, right? But what I did see when I watched him, this dude is running some pretty filthy routes. He had this one comeback for a touchdown that he just blew past man coverage. He destroyed the man coverage in the end zone. He's a guy that's been getting a lot of rave reviews, especially in the offseason. And he's generally speaking, even in deeper leagues, he's on everybody's waiver wire. So he's a guy that I'm super intrigued on and just stashing at the back of my roster and just seeing if he becomes somebody, right? He's still a young guy. He's still got the potential stepping up, especially in the T. Higgins absence. So Andre Losavas is a guy that I'm mildly, if not even more than mildly, intrigued in right now.
Yeah, I think that's a solid call out. I think he's a physical freak. Like combine absolutely destroyed it. And yeah, if Higgins continues to miss extended time and he kind of looks like the X that he can get the job done playing X for them, there's a chance that going into next year, if T. Higgins does go to a different team, that Andre Iosivas is the X next year and moving forward. So I think that's a good cheap buy call out going there. Let's move on to the Rams. Cooper Kupp goes down with a what I've read is a pretty severe ankle injury. He is expected to miss an extended period of time. He's an IR candidate. Puka is already on the IR with a knee injury. Neither is expected to be out for the whole season, but they're both going to be out for a while. Are you guys interested in any of Demarcus Robinson, Ty Johnson, or Jordan Whittington? We'll go to you, Rupert.
I'm not really super interested in any of those players. Demarcus Robinson, if I had to pick one, just due to he's had more production in the past. But as far as I'm concerned, I feel like that offense is going to be pretty rough, and they're going to be running the ball a lot with Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. Just try and get through this rough patch until they get their wide receivers back.
I will say I'm going to go a different direction there. I think I'm going to choose a guy that I think is he's done really well in the offseason the past few years, and that's Jordan Whittington, right? A guy out of Texas. It looks like from all sources that I can tell when in the Rams depth chart is he looks to be the guy that they're looking at as the next man up. I really liked him just at Texas. He wasn't a fantastic prospect at the combine, but he is more interesting to me because I know what Demarcus Robinson is. I don't think we've seen quite Jordan Whittington get that role. We don't quite know what he is yet. So give me the unknown in Jordan Whittington.
Yeah, I thought Jordan Whittington's tape was terrible studying him as a prospect. I think there's a reason that his draft capital was what it was, which was virtually non-existent. Did he even get drafted? Was he a UDFA? I don't even know.
I think he might have been a UDFA, yeah.
So I'm not interested there. I'm not interested in any of these guys. The really, like, the offensive line is decimated too. This team just looks like it's kind of going to be a dumpster fire, and Stafford's running for his life. I think Kyron Williams is about the only guy on this team that I have any interest in at all right now. So I'm just going to avoid the whole situation, let somebody else go dumpster diving for those wide receivers. Next one here, A.J. Brown says he's expected to miss a couple of weeks with a hamstring, and we know hamstring injuries can kind of linger on and just nag and be annoying all season long. Devontae Smith obviously gets a bump. He had a great game last night with A.J. Brown out, and he's the clear number one guy, and he's so talented that we all know that if he ever gets a chance to be a number one guy, he's going to put up numbers. Is there anyone else that you're interested in here? Jackson, you're the Eagles fan. Go for it, man.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Dallas Goedert obviously is going to get a little bit of a bump just because he climbs the depth chart a little bit, right? Devontae Smith, I'm really excited what he does with the number one role. I've always thought he was a solid first option on a team, and he landed on a team where he's the second option. So I'm really excited about him. One guy that's really under the radar for me that was at least getting some pretty decent usage last night was tight end Grant Calcaterra. He was a Devi darling, if you guys remember, 4 or 5 years ago. So I'd be interested to see what he does with an upgraded role. So if I'm picking anybody, obviously we're gonna run more with Saquon. Devontae Smith's gonna get his. I'm not really interested in Britton Covey. But if gun to my head, if I'm picking an under the radar guy, Grant Calcaterra is somebody that could really see some increased usage these next few weeks.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on the whole situation. Again, like this is sad because I loved Jahan Dotson, but like AJ Brown's out, he gets one catch for 6 yards, and
Jahan Dotson's not the guy.
I know Britton, whatever his name is, comes out of nowhere, gets 6 targets, and Jahan Dotson is basically not involved. Like he's dead to me. R.I.P. Jahan Dotson. But yeah, no, I'll just enjoy the bump from my Devontae Smith shares, and that's about the only reaction here. So let's move on from the injury report. This is depressing. All the guys we like are out, and all the guys that we're left to think about picking up are scrubs. So let's talk about something more fun. We're gonna go into a little bit of a stock up and stock down segment here. And before we do, I want to take a quick break to just shout out our Discord. If you're new listening to the channel, first of all, thanks for listening. But also, we have a free Discord. You can find it, the link in our bio on Twitter. If you're listening on Twitter, it'll take you to our website. The Discord is linked on our website. If you're listening to YouTube, Apple, anywhere else, it'll be in the show notes. But it's completely free. We've got a community of over 90 guys that are in there just chatting all the time, bunch of Dynasty junkies. It's a great group of guys. We would love to have you. So come check out the Discord. Let's get into the second half of our show here. We're going to do some stock ups from the first 2 weeks and then some stock downs. And we'll start with the stock ups, and we'll start with you, Matt Rupert. Who is your stock up from the first 2 weeks of the NFL season?
I'm going to go with a much deeper pick here. I'm going to go with Alec Pierce from Indianapolis. Much to our surprise, he's been outproducing Adonai Mitchell. And it kind of shocked me because I have him on a few rosters because he kind of popped a little bit last year on some deep balls. So I had some interest. But when I watched more, I didn't see much more to his game. So I just kind of thought that he'd be a roster clogger. But I ended up holding him in some other deeper leagues. And he's actually wide receiver 8 on the season so far. 84% snap share in week 1, 95% last week. I watched all 22 this week, and he was open quite a bit in this game. Wide open, and Anthony Richardson never threw him the ball. So he could have had a much bigger week than he even had. So he's overall looks like a completely different player to me this year. So he's a guy that I'm interested in stashing on some leagues and maybe making some moves to trade for him and see what happens.
Yeah, I like the call out and I hate the call out because we love Adonai Mitchell around here, and Alec Pierce is doing everything that we hoped Adonai Mitchell would do, which has been a little disappointing. But I love that you went to the tape, that you got into the all 22, and that your analysis there was rooted in what you saw on film. So, Jackson, let's go to you. Who is your stock up from the first 2 weeks of the season?
Yeah, so a little higher up on the ADP and value, but I chose Baker Mayfield from Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, Baker has been a guy that I have been just all over. I've loved him so much ever since he was just a college quarterback in Oklahoma. I'm not sure who liked him more, Rich Dodson from Dynasty Nerds or me. There's a little bit of a competition there in my mind anyway. Loved him as a prospect, loved him as a player. He's had some bad breaks, right? He led the Browns to their first playoff win in forever and then gets sent packing for Deshaun Watson. He goes to the dumpster fire that is the Panthers and then gets released from there. He's finally found a home with Tampa Bay, and he looks like he's thriving for all intents and purposes. I mean, he right now, if you look at his stats and what he's doing, he's somebody that is really, really is seeing a huge rise in just his ability to be accurate in the pocket, to be calm in the pocket. He has like the second highest QBR in the NFL right now. He's tied for the lead in touchdown passes. I mean, this offense with Mike Evans and with Chris Godwin is just absolutely humming. He even showed off his wheels in the game on Sunday, which I didn't even know that he had. So Baker Mayfield in a quarterback landscape that guys aren't really producing the way we thought they were going to produce, he is producing, and I'm loving every second of it.
All right. I respect it. He certainly has been solid for a couple of my dynasty rosters. Mine, I'm going to go even further up the ADP list here to a guy that is Alyssa Jackson's favorite player, Mr. Devin Achan.
Still
And
hurts.
led her to give Matt Jackson the L this week. And it's a double L for you because we argued about this on a show, and you said he had the most to lose. And I said, I don't know. I think he might have the most to gain. And I'm just going to go ahead and say we should have had him and Gibbs flipped in ADP this offseason. Like in
Yeah.
hindsight, Achan should have been going round 2 and Gibbs should have been going round 4. He's got a better workload, a better touch involvement. He kind of looks like the better player, to be honest with you. Like he's just phenomenal with the ball in his hands. The usage is like every fantasy manager's dream. The way they're involving him in the pass catching game, 14 targets through 2 weeks, leads the NFL for the running back position. Then when he touches it, he's just so efficient with his touches, and he's young, he's explosive, he's talented. He's my RB3, and I think it's easier to argue that he should be higher. Like it would be easier to argue him over Bijan than it would be to argue anybody below him over Achan. That's my contention. I think he's been underrated and big time riser for me this season.
Look,
Stock way up.
I can handle my L with grace. Okay. I was wrong. I'm not right all the time. I never will be, but that was a huge L.
I'm not handling the W with grace. I'm rubbing it right in your nose, man. Before we move on to the stock downs, I got to give an honorable mention to just one of the feel-good stories of the season. Is there a bigger riser, more stock up than J.K. Dobbins? I mean, he went from the realm of the dead in Dynasty ADP. Nobody wanted him on their roster. He was considered kind of a roster clogger, and now he's like a guy that you can plug and play every week and feel great about starting him. And I don't know if he keeps this up. Like I heard Dynasty nerds talking about him this week, and Rich Dotson was saying I wouldn't take less than a first round pick for him. I mean, this is a guy that was like dead 2 weeks ago.
He was at the bottom of ADP.
I know. So yeah. Anyway, honorable mention. Shout out J.K. Dobbins. Let's go to some stock down players, and we're gonna start with you, Rupert. You've got a spicy one here. Who is your stock down player?
It was rooted in watching some Alec Pierce film, but watching the All 22 on Anthony Richardson was rough this week. Really rough. Through the first 2 games, his O-line has the best pass blocking grade of any O-line in the league. He's got ridiculous weapons, yet he's still completing 48% of his passes. Yes, he has highlights where he just makes your jaw drop with the throw he makes that's on the dime, 65 yards down the field, but he's missing routine throws. He's missing wide open receivers, not really going through his progressions. It was really rough, and I want to preface this by saying I know he only played pretty much 1 season in college, played 2 games, 3 games last year, so it's basically like he's still a rookie. So I'm not going to like freak out totally, but if I was doing a new startup, he would not be in the first round for me, even in Superflex.
Yeah, I think we were really quick to crown him, and that seems obvious now in hindsight. I mean, and I get why, because it's like he legitimately had QB1 overall upside. But yeah, looking back now on what a small sample size we had of him as a starting quarterback, even as a college prospect, and then basically 3 healthy games last year, to jump him all the way up to where we did in Superflex ADP, sight unseen. In hindsight, it just looks like, I mean, if the price had been more reasonable, you could say, okay, yeah, this is like basically his 5th start. He was a raw prospect to begin with. This is normal. Don't panic. But when you pay what you paid for him, you kind of need him to be ready right now. And then now I'm not sure if he is. So I think that's a good shout out for a stock down. Jackson, we'll go with you next. Who is your stock down? This is another spicy one.
It is. I'm going to preface this with I haven't given up complete hope yet. But my stock down guy is Caleb Williams. Look, I'm a firm believer, and we're going to talk about this on our bonus podcast. So if you're not subscribed to the site, subscribe so you can hear my other take on this. But I'm a firm believer in having patience on rookies, right? Have patience on these guys because it takes a while to step in to the next level. And, the windows get shorter. The guys, they get faster. But Caleb Williams, he was a top 12 startup pick this offseason. That's not the value that you're getting out of Caleb Williams. He's getting sacked just about every chance he gets. He's not making good reads. He's not throwing the ball well. Here's a fun stat I actually saw this week that I'm going to bring up. Caleb Williams in 2 games this week, or 2 games this year, has put up 353 yards of offense. The punter who he said will not ever punt the ball, that famous story on draft night where he said you're not ever going to punt the ball, has 554 punt yards. So more than 100 more yards of punt yards than Caleb Williams has offense. Not a great stat if you're Caleb Williams.
Not
his
great,
head
Bob.
is also, huh?
I said not great, Bob.
So, I mean, looking at him, I mean, I saw a video this week where CJ Stroud during the post game was shaking his hand. And he was trying to tell him something. He was trying to give him advice and coach him up a little bit. And Caleb Williams is walking away, right? He doesn't want to hear it. He's done. He doesn't want to hear your advice. Like, take the advice from the reigning rookie of the year, right? I mean, it's just Caleb. The whole team right now is a dumpster fire. But you are not getting that top 12 upside that you drafted Caleb Williams for.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, we did our very first one-on-one team consultation this week. Shout out Thomas, one of our subscribers. So I had a little Zoom call with him on Friday night, kind of talking through his roster, and he is kind of on the back end of a rebuild. He just had 3 first-round picks this year. He's got 3 first-round picks next year, but he's been rebuilding for a few years. He's itching to turn the corner and become a contender, and his roster is actually really solid, top to bottom. But his quarterbacks, it was Caleb Williams and Brock Purdy. Not terrible. It's a 10-team league, so take that into account too. But I'm like, dude, your roster is ready to contend, but Caleb Williams is not ready to be your QB1. Like on a real contending dynasty roster, he's just not. And so I told him, I was like, you should consider flipping. Like, can I send Caleb Williams and one of these 3 firsts I have next year and go get somebody like a Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen or somebody in that elite tier of quarterbacks? Can I go upgrade? And then Brock Purdy becomes my QB2. And now I have a really strong quarterback situation instead of a kind of ugly one. And that could put you over the top. And he was like, wow, I just took Caleb Williams 101. It never even crossed my mind to even think about selling him. And I wouldn't do that in every situation, but I think in some situations, like if you're looking for production right now, I think he's going to be fine long-term dynasty. I think somebody else will still pay you a lot for him. But if you want somebody that's going to help you win now, I'm not sure Caleb Williams is going to be that guy this year.
Yeah.
So I'll go into my stock down player quickly here, and looking for one that's not injury or age related, like CMC or Kelsey. Those are too easy. I don't know what's going on with Dalton Kincaid. He had 6 total targets through 2 weeks and -3 air yards, -3. His snap share dropped all the way down to 42% of the snaps in week 2. Not sure what's going on with that. Maybe it's just a fluky couple of weeks, but that doesn't really explain the snap share. So I'm scared, man. If his usage doesn't change, he's not even going to be a usable fantasy asset this season at all. And he was in a lot of people's top 5 dynasty tight ends, including mine. He was a heavily called out breakout candidate that, I and a lot of others fully expected him to be the number 1 pass catching option in this offense. And given the other options out there, there's really no excuse for him not to be. So I don't know what's going on there, but stock way down for Dalton Kincaid right now.
It's so funny because all the targets you thought that were going to go to Dalton Kincaid have been going to Khalil Shakur. So that's interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, Curtis Samuel's not even healthy. Keon Coleman, he's all right. He is what he is. He's a contested catch guy. But like Dalton Kincaid, they spent a first round pick on him. I thought he was clearly the most talented pass catching weapon in this offense. I just don't understand what's going on right now. But I'm not there in practice. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the coaches are just not thrilled with what he's putting out there. But yeah, definitely a situation to monitor. I don't want to like panic sell, but like 42% snaps, you can't be fantasy viable that way. That's scary to me.
It's not great.
So, all right, that's going to wrap up the show for us tonight. Remember to subscribe so you can check out the bonus podcast we're about to record here in a second. But you can find us. You can find me on social media at CouchScoutsFF. You can find Matt Jackson at DevyMatt. And you can find Mr. Rupert at Matthew Rupert FF on Twitter /X. And definitely check out the website, CouchScouts.com. Promo code film for 10% off. And please leave a rating, review, comment, subscribe, whatever, on whatever platform you're listening on. We really